according to the way we think. We act according to the way we think. So let's think success in any way. It's contagious. And, you know, we'd like to believe that it will spin over in the job search. Good. Let's reflect a little bit on last week or 2 weeks ago. We talked about values and priorities. We talked about motivators. And we got some feedback from you, and I don't want to try to recreate that tonight. John, I did email you. There were right before I came. There were two pieces that should have been handed out last week, and one piece should have been handed out tonight. It's not going to happen. But they're summary sheets. The 2 sheets from last week. I really, when John emails them to you, I really would like you to take the time to fill those out. And the sheet that reflects tonight, fill that out as well. This is going to be important at the end when you're creating your brand and your value proposition. So as I told you in the beginning, you know, this is not a mathematical equation. This is a matter of research and collecting information and see how we can package it to fit together. So one question, if anybody did bring their sheets from last time, the last sheet described my needs. Everybody have a chance to take a look at that. Has anybody ever done this before in a job search?
No.
This is the paradigm in which you're going to want to conduct your job search. And I mentioned to you last week that as you do this, not everything will necessarily end up being exactly the way you wrote it. But in the absence of something like this, in the absence of this type of roadmap, you know, it's kind of a person's going helter-skelter. And so that's using time. And that's what makes the job search extend a little bit. Use this as you are entertaining an opportunity. Use your responses here, because some of the questions, statements on here where you had to put a response in are reflective of an interview question I think you're going to get. What are you looking for in compensation? It's a tough question. I don't want to answer that. You know, I know you pay competitively. Let's just look at the skills that are involved in the job. You know, that wasn't the question that the interviewer asked. Well, here's your opportunity to draft out your response. You know, and if you struggle with that, you know, find Dan or I or one of the other steering committee. You know, come in early, or we can stay. Tonight I've got another appointment after this tonight, so I can't stay tonight. But I'm not sure what Dan's schedule is tonight. But if you've got a question on filling some of that out, just bounce it off of us. Our email address is on the distribution, and I'm certainly okay with anybody sending me a question, finding my email on the distribution. I think I mentioned this last time, long after we leave, this document remains very important to people. And I think I mentioned last time, I got new people here tonight, change is part of what we have to manage in our career. Now, companies do have job families and, you know, career paths to a point. But change is part of our work environment here and throughout the world. And, you know, there is a realization we have, if it's going to be up to you and I to manage our own careers. And this sheet, you know, can be a little bit of help to you. You look at it once a year and say, is everything pretty much the same on that sheet? I'm happy in my job? Or, you know, this has not been an easy year for me. Why? Look at that sheet. And then do something about it, you know, hopefully correcting what doesn't feel good. and/or maybe it's time to be proactive and look for another job. You know, it's easy to say, well, it'll get better. And a year later, it'll get better. 2 years later, it'll get better. 3 years later. And then it doesn't get better, and it's very difficult. So one needs to be proactive and manage their career, and I really personally endorse this sheet. You know, in a job search, remember what I told you, that we'll color this green right now. And the job offer that you accept will be a shade of green. It won't be exactly the way you stated it there, because you got to compromise a little bit here and there. But there are also some important things right now that that are in the personal column. We talked a little bit about relocation. So enough of that sheet, but one of the sheets on there, one of the questions talk a little bit about culture. You could certainly look back to session 1 and think about your values and how that might reflect the culture that you'd like to work in. The first 2 entries at the top talks about job title, responsibilities, competencies, and next meeting, just to put a little plug in, we're going to talk about competencies. So you may not have that line totally filled in quite yet. So hopefully some of our sessions here will help you fill that in. Enough of that for that sheet tonight. All right. Here we are. Tonight we're going to talk about the Myers-Briggs indicator type. It's better known as MBTI. I introduce it through this book, the Kersey instrument. The Myers-Briggs instrument in itself is licensed and expensive, and certainly we don't want to violate any laws. So, looking at the book, they have created questions and answers to give you your Myers-Briggs type, and so that we are free to share that with you. We're going to do it on a piece of paper rather than giving you a book, but it's to the public. So we're going to gain our insight into our Myers-Briggs type through the Kersey instrument that they have in the book. It's very well used. So this is just a refresher. You've seen this slide that in last week, in terms of what we want to do, the component map. We dealt with values and motivators, life balance, personal needs. Tonight we're going to do Myers-Briggs, the type as I just mentioned to you. In February, we're going to deal with competencies and accomplishments, and make a note, if you want to get something out of that session, you need to bring your resume. It doesn't have to be final, perfect. Whatever resume you have, please bring it, because we're going to refer to it in some exercises. And then the third Wednesday in February, we'll do Strength Finders. And then as we go into March, we are trying, in the beginning of March, we're going to try wrapping all this up and help you with putting this together. And then we'll talk about the compelling resume. Dan Barber is going to be doing that presentation. And he'll be, he's not going to repeat this, but the concepts of what we're talking about here and other elements of your resume. So this is a pretty full package. If you stay with us, we hope that you'll find that this has been a good learning experience. Any comments from last week? Just check people out, make sure everybody's okay, no question.
You have extra presentations from
I
last
do.
week?
Great. They're coming. So this is what I just verbalized to you. Here's the calendar of what is ahead of us. and what we did last week. These are the sheets that John's gonna send you as an email. And I apologize, they were supposed to be in handouts from last week, but in terms of your values and priorities, you know, tell yourself or indicate to yourself, what are my top values and priorities? I told you, I would suggest those are non-negotiable. Take those very, very seriously. Yeah, you know, values are in here. It's the heart of who I am and the heart of who you are. And there's no job worth compromising your values. No job. Listen to your values. Motivators, we mostly wanted to look at motivators last week, not demotivators, but I said, you know, if there's something you said, say never again. Well, if it's not that, then what's the opposite of that? We talked about life balance, and some people have issues with life balance, other people don't. But now, as I told you, is a time to address that as you're beginning, and certainly the whole conversation around relocation. And then personal needs, and I guess that's where, sorry, personal needs were in relocation. So you're going to get these two, fill them in, and when we get to that session on the value proposition, these two, we want you to, I'll remind you, but we want you to bring these two to that meeting. So tonight we're doing MBTI. Career assessments. There's a lot of career assessments out in the market. Many of them are free. And they measure, and I just had instruments, just Google and you'll find them. But tonight we are going to do Myers-Briggs, and Strength Finders is something that you find in a bookstore through the book that I showed you. So what is the Myers-Briggs type? Has anybody here already taken a Myers-Briggs and know their type?
Long time ago.
A long time ago. Okay. You are welcome to take it again this evening. It's a unique way that we express ourselves. This personality, so to speak, the behaviors, we were born with that. We're hardwired. This started to be nurtured about age 4. And we start to then, as we grow older, start to discover who we are. And that's a little bit about what Myers-Briggs is about. Carl Jung, father of psychology, talked about personality, you know, way over my head, many years ago. But two ladies, Isabel Myers and Catherine Briggs, mother and daughter, decided in their roles in psychology to study that and see if they could simplify what Carl Jung was talking about in personality. And I remember going through the accreditation on this, and it's been a number of years ago, but as I remember the story, how mother kind of got involved in this. She didn't like the guy that her daughter was bringing around the house, and so that she was starting to assess him psychologically. I don't know how that all ended up, but that's probably a little bit about how mother and daughter got involved in this study. It's important to know that that MBTI is not a measure of our skills or abilities. One will say, well, how does that relate to what it is I want to do? Quite a bit. I could just digress in the interview process when we're down to the final 2 candidates. Most of the time, people are perceived as having equal skills. Then how does the hiring manager make the decision? And the hiring manager makes the decision on what I call fit. And for the person who gets the job, it's a joy. It's a high. For the person who doesn't get the job, why? I could do that job description in my sleep. I could perform that. And unfortunately, getting feedback on why I didn't fit is very difficult, very difficult. And I usually will say to people, you're not going to get good feedback from the hiring manager. Sometimes there are people who will do that, but not all the time. And I usually say, in my mind, how I would justify that, that job wasn't meant for either of us. As much as I would like it, if they see something there that I'm not aware of and fit, maybe it's good that it turned out this way. It's not easy to digest because we didn't get what we were looking for. So what Myers-Briggs gives us is an insight, and I hope to embellish that a little bit tonight, about who we are. Who we are. I'll talk more about that. We're going to talk about the Kiersey instrument in just a minute, and I'll be handing out the information. There's going to be a 2 or 3 page questionnaire, and then you're going to score your results. And then from there, we'll go into some depth and talk about what type is about. A couple other thoughts that come to my mind that aren't on the slides, because some people have taken this. Myers-Briggs will say, generally speaking, your type doesn't change. There are exceptions. As we grow older, wisdom makes us more adaptable, and that's Myers-Briggs, my Myers-Briggs type at work. So some people may take this tonight and say, well, this isn't what it was the last time. Typically, when that occurs, if you could look at a graph, our mark is right in the midpoint, and it's on one side or the other, but it's going to give a different result. And I'll try to come around and talk to you if you're in that position after you do this tonight. But for the most part, for those who have taken it, there should be some similarities. And we'll try to check that out in some of the handouts. I do believe that this type, we started to be nurtured about age 4. And that's our parents, our mom and dad, our siblings. And we go into grade school. And in grade school, we're starting to interface with other kids, children. Anybody can remember the 5th and 6th grade? Pretty tough grades for some kids in grade school. It's a clash of type, of personalities. But at that age, kids don't quite understand all of that. But we start to learn, and we move into high school. And we feel that we like certain courses better than others. I think Myers-Briggs is influencing that. We go then, if we decide to go into work after high school, I am pretty certain that Myers-Briggs type is at play. Some of us go to on to college. What major do we pick? As we all know, should know, there's a difference between majoring in chemistry and being an artist. Well, some people are very, very good artists, but have no interest in chemistry. And some people are very good chemists, but have no interest in art. There's a little bit of Myers-Briggs at work there. Again, I'll try to show it. Then we choose our jobs. First job, whatever it is, out of high school or out of college. And some of us, if you majored, for instance, in accounting and found an accountant job, pretty good chance you like that. You've been conditioned about what that work is like. But there are some of us, my son is one, where one of my sons, he entered a job that he didn't like. And wanted to quit after we put a roof over his head, but I said, you got that truck to pay for, so you got to stay doing what you're doing. But with good fortune and a little bit of networking, he found his niche. And he did it, by the way, I'll just put a plug in, Manpower Professionals, I'm not sure that's what we call them today, but they have exclusive contracts with different companies. And at the time, Mike went to the Manpower in Gurnee, and they had contracts with Motorola and Abbott. And Mike got called to interview with Abbott, and he was there supposedly on a 3-month assignment. And what happens many, many times, he rolled the dice. They gave him a signal that at the end of the 3 months they were going to hire him. And I think it's now about 18 years later, he's at AbbVie. So why was Mike feeling uncomfortable in that first job? When I'm not going to take time to describe what he was doing, but what he was doing then and what he's doing today, it's night and day. He's happy in what he's doing today. He's working his type. And so that this follows us then all through our career. And the longer we work, there's a chance the more people that we're going to interface with. Trust me, there's a lot of Myers-Briggs going on when that happens at work. So it's not only the type of job I have, but it's the people that I interface with. And so that maybe, again, by doing this tonight, at the end of tonight, you have some insights to say, yeah, maybe I understand. So that's about all I'm going to do in terms of building up what we're going to do. How many people were here last time? Okay, because some people were not here. So guys or gals, somebody help me. Raise your hand if you were here last time, because what you're going to get is tonight's handouts. And then the people that, I'll take back with. The people who are raising their hand, they get that back. And I'll wait till they get around and then.
I know you do.
Anybody else who was here last week?
We've got
You guys are squared away? I think he's got more coming up, right? Another set.
I'm thinking
Oh,
this week's, because I don't have a copy.
Okay.
No, I've got, oh, yeah, this one.
Okay.
So we shouldn't take the Myers-Briggs then?
Oh yeah, I want you to, if you want to.
Oh, yeah, I definitely want to. I want to see about
Who's
mine.
moving?
We're both new.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, it might be in, oh, I see.
Okay, if you just went on the clip and stay with me for a few minutes. What you first have is a paper clip, the instrument itself, and the last page is a scoring sheet. The instrument itself, the sorter, almost all of these are A/B. My suggestion to you is take the first inclination and check it. Don't spend 5 minutes on a question. Then as you go through this, you say, geez, that question looks like something I just filled out before. Don't try to remember how you filled that out. Just keep moving right through this and answer it as it comes to you. That will give you the purest result. We can't do it here tonight, but the Myers-Briggs instrument can actually predict who is playing games with us, and we can't do that. But I don't think we want to do it. I mean, if we want to truly get something out of this, just my coaching of you is just move through it, answer it as it comes to your mind. I'd like you to take then a look at the answer sheet. One thing that's important is that sometimes we have an inclination to do our answering down. If you take a look, it's asking us to record our answers horizontally.
Maybe
Don't
that's-
go vertically.
I would totally have gone down.
Go horizontally,
Oh,
okay? It will then, and you can read the, I'm not going to stand up here and read the instructions, but go ahead and read the instructions underneath that. And then there's actually an example below that about how to score. And what I was mentioning to you before, just look down at the bottom. Let's just say that the E had an 8 and the I had a 2. I'm not referring to that, but sometimes people will get a score where, say, the E is a 7 and the I is a 6. It will be the E. It will be the 7. I think I've had some people have 0, 0. Let me know if you get that. That doesn't happen too often. But the whole idea here then is that we're going to go off of whatever 4 letters identify you, and this is all said and done. So we're going to have some quiet time here. It's about 20 to 8. I believe we'll watch how you're all doing this, but we'd like to be back into our conversation by 8 o'clock. So go to it. Ask if you have any questions. Which is made up of 4 letters. What this slide up here on the board shows you that Myers and Briggs, in their studies, came up with the conclusion that there are 16 different types of personalities. And each of us have a type, one type. There are times where we are going to be put into situations where we need to leave that type and behave in another part, another type. But for the most part, we jump right back into our type. What I'd like you to do, maybe just turn over the sorter or get a blank piece of paper and a pen, and I'd like you to do something. I'd like you to take the pen in your hand, and I'd like you to sign your name as if you are cashing a $1,000 check. Now when you do that, it really feels comfortable. We've done that a zillion times in our life, haven't we? You know what's coming. I want you to put the pen in the other hand and sign your name as if you are endorsing a $1,000 check. And now as you're doing this you're not feeling comfortable. You're out of your comfort zone. But you're so determined to modify your behavior, you're going to get it done. And when you get it done, there's another $1,000 check for you to endorse, and you got your choice. You're going to go right-handed or left-handed. The way you signed the check the first time. And that is what I'm trying to use as an analogy in we have one type, 4 letters, but there are times where we're going to be asked to behave differently than those 4 letters. And that will be like writing with the opposite hand. And we stay there to get the job done, but we quietly go back to our 4 letters and the type. So, anybody want to share a type? Yes?
Well, I was ISFX.
X. What does X mean?
I had an even between J and P.
Between J and P. ISF, write this down. ISFJ. And also write down ISFP. And I think we have another example of that right in front of me. We have E and I here. Anybody else have an even score? Okay. Well, just quickly do, what's yours?
And E and I.
E and I, and what are the other three letters?
Oh, STJ.
STJ, so ESTJ and ISTJ in the back.
I had a tie on SN.
I'm sorry, what?
SNN. SN.
Both?
I had a tie on that.
Yeah, on the S and the N. What are the other three letters?
I have E, T, and T.
So ESTP
And
and ENTP. Write those two combinations down. Somebody else?
I had an E and an I,
E and an I, okay. And the other three letters?
S, F, J.
SFJ, ESFJ and ISFJ. Write those two combinations down. Anybody else? Okay. Not unusual. I mean, we see this when we give this to people, and sometimes that result comes about because of wisdom. I've been there so many times, you know, that I'm coming towards the middle. And in this case, some of you are right there at the middle. So I'll come back and talk a little bit about those two combinations for you. So I think that what I'm going to do next is, rather than, we're not going to do an inventory right now, all the different combinations. Let's try to explain what the E and the I is, you know, and go through each of the preferences. So the four letters are typed, okay? Four letters are typed. And in the type, you have the choice of either being an E or an I. By the way, this is a handout. You have the choice of either being an E or I. That's a preference that you showed. Okay, you had either an S or an N. That's a preference. One of those is a preference. The T or the F, a preference. And the J or the P, a preference. So the four letters are our type, and then the preference you pick is the one letter versus the other letter. So let me just explain, to give you an insight a little bit about what we mean by a preference. We talk about the E and the I. The E and the I. The key word is energy. How am I energized, especially at work? How am I energized, especially at work? So, if you're brave enough, can I have an E explain to me how they're energized at work? As you think back. How were you energized?
I personally love to go into work when it's quiet, as an extrovert. And I'll go in at 4 o'clock in the morning, nobody's there, and I just get my work done. I plug my headphones and just create, oh, I'm sorry, extrovert, forgive me. I'm an introvert. I'm dancing in there too, no.
Very good.
Forgive me.
Very good. You did well. So anybody that's an E, how were you energized?
Well, I know I had an even split, but I like to work with people. And if the team around me energized me versus, you know, going in at 4 o'clock in the morning. I would have done it once or twice to get work done, but it wouldn't be something that would energize me on a daily basis.
You get
So-
used to it real quick.
What I would like, yeah.
Well, I'm same split, E and I.
Mhm.
I'm a project manager. I love working with my teams, I like the meetings, etc. And then at the end of the day, when it's quiet, everyone's gone, then I check out the other good chunk of work. So
Okay.
there is a split.
There's your balance. Yeah. What I'd like you each to do on this sheet of paper is, based on your letter, ask yourself and write down, how am I energized? What's the thing that really energizes me at work? And as I think a little bit about the two brave people, souls who shared their soul, the I loves that quiet time from 4 to 7 in the morning. He's energized by that. The E is energized when she's working around people. Think a little bit about your answers. If that's where you get your energy from in the past, shouldn't that also be a benchmark when you're looking at new jobs? Where do I get my energy from? You know, we're at a window of opportunity here. Life's full of options. Why not go after work that energizes me? Just as a comment, we don't ever want to stereotype job titles by a preference, or even a type. That would be very wrong. But remember I told you about the right hand and the left hand? I've worked with a couple CEOs, and one in particular that I'm thinking about was an I. And not unusual, if you look where that person came from earlier in their career in finance, and needed that space and time with a closed door to make sure the numbers all balanced. Well, along the way, and he got promoted to be an I. So you know what? He had to stand up and give presentations to the board of directors. He had to go to Wall Street and give presentations. And he used his left hand to do it. But if you talked to him when he was done, he said, "Oh God, that wore me out. That sapped the energy out of me." So we can adapt ourselves in a short period of time to do that. The point I'm making is we don't want to stereotype a person just because they are. But on the other hand, what I'm saying to you, steer yourself towards that which energizes you. Yes?
So if you were an E, would you be less likely to be a work from home employee?
Could be. I would say to you that that person might be more comfortable as an I working from home because there's more enclosed space and not a lot of commotion. E's can deal with that commotion. I'm just be an observation. All right. Let's take a look then at the S or the N. And this is how we take information in. I'm going to ask for a little bit of help. Mo.
Yes.
Come on up here. So Mo, what I'd like you to do, this is how we take information in. I'd like you to look at this room, Mo, and tell me what you see. Use some words. Use some words. Come to your mind. What do you see?
I see a lot of round tables. I see most of the seats are taken. Variety of people wear different clothes, so winter clothes. The lights are some work, some don't work. I mean, that's about it.
Okay, that's good. Thanks. And you are an M.
Right.
Okay, this is how he takes information in. Let me talk a little bit about the S. The S says, the S looks up and said, tell me what you see. Well, you know, Mo, I agree with you, there's round tables, but did you notice that they're brown? And did you notice that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? You notice there's 7 round tables. Yeah, you're right. People are wearing, I know you do. You're an M. So the taking information and verbalizing, the people who are S's, do I have S's here?
Yeah.
Okay. The S's normally will speak factually. Normally will speak factually. I'm just giving you just a word. If you're given a goal, along with an N who's given the same goal, the S's will get that goal by going boom, 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 and just the checklist. They'll get there. They'll get there. And that, I was trying to role play the S. that's what I was doing. Mo and I did the same thing, we achieved the same goal. But you notice, I had to talk about the brown and the tables and the round tables, and there's 8 tables, and you know, I was very factual. And sometimes in the work that we choose, we better be factual. We better be factual. And again, I don't want to stereotype, but you know, if you're an analytical type person, I think your success is the fact that you're factual.
But what Mo was saying were facts too.
They were, but not with a lot of detail.
Okay.
more specific.
I'm trying to be very specific in my role play.
John, that was the limits of what I would say. I couldn't go into detail and tell you.
Yeah.
He was done.
I'm done, yeah.
He was done. So let's talk about the ends. The ends are a little bit, if you ever heard of this guy Covey, you start with the end in mind. So the end isn't as detailed as I was. Many times people that, for instance, are in planning, or somewhere where you have to, Mo, you're in business, in sales, and so Mo probably gets a sales goal. At the beginning of the year, he doesn't sit down and say, well, I'm going to do this and do this and do this. He starts with the goal in mind, and by the end of the year, you know, he's working his way back to get all the pieces put together. So the end starts, as they face a situation, they start with the end in mind. And they have a tendency, and that's what he was doing, is they summarize in their mind. I get it. I get it. And I want to now talk a little bit about that relative to how we communicate. Myers and Briggs will say that there's a way to judge if you're communicating well and if you're not communicating well. They will say that when you find yourself interrupting another person, that person, if you're an N, you're talking to an S. And if you're an S, you're talking to an N, you're going to interrupt. Why? Because the N is going, zzz, zzz, I get it. The S says, well, wait a minute, I'll get there, but then you get, no, I don't want anybody to laugh. That is a very honest event. That's the way it happens.
Say that whole thing again, that was interesting.
Okay, so
I'm an S.
if Mo and I have a goal in mind, the end, with the end in mind, they start connecting facts real fast. And they come to conclusions. The S's are going to get there, but they got to get their facts one at a time to get there. And so that as a N and an S work together, you have to respect that. You have to respect that some people will get to the goal differently than you. And you know that there's a clue, and I'm very cognizant of this myself every day when I'm talking to somebody. If I find myself interrupting somebody, or they're interrupting me, I know I'm talking, in my case, to an S. So a little bit about how we take information in, and then how we verbalize it, S or an N. So now we move to the T and the F, and that relates to making decisions. The T's make decisions very, very objectively, through analysis. The F's make decisions, I like to say, by my gut. You know, it just feels like that's what we should do today. That's what we should do today. Who are T's in this room? How many T's do we have in this room?
T's or T?
I don't want somebody who's a boarder, but who's a fairly strong T?
Fairly? Very.
A strong T. Okay. And how do you go about making decisions in your shop life?
I just, think it through before I actually act on it.
Mm-hmm.
It makes, just weigh out the options, what could happen if the one.
So those that don't know, Mike is insecurity.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to make a mistake in arresting somebody. He's getting his facts together, and he's doing an analysis before he makes a decision. Thank you. Who's an N?
An N?
You mean an F?
F,
An
I'm sorry,
F.
who's an F, excuse me.
Oh.
Let's see. You're an F. How do you go about making decisions? Or what type of work do you do that would suggest that you're an F?
Connecting the dots of multiple pieces of information.
Do you ever make exceptions?
Yeah. Well, exceptions based on how I feel the situation is and the conditions of the situation.
What'd you say? Did you say that?
And the conditions of the.
No, say, what were the words we said right before that? Depends on how I feel.
How I feel, yeah.
Okay. And tell people a little bit about your type of work, what you do.
I work in innovation.
In innovation.
So creating new ideas and,
And not every idea works.
no, a lot of them don't.
So you kind of go by your gut once in a while
Yep, yeah, many times there's no information to
in making
make
your
a
decision.
pragmatic decision.
So there's types of work, where we make our decision not through an analysis and an objective decision. It's more harmony. I just want to make this work. So I would think that somebody in IT or finance, in making their decisions, would want to have a strength in being doing analysis and making objective decisions. There's some of us that worked in human resources, and we couldn't look at every human being working in the company the same way. We know through our training that there are 16 different types of personalities, and so sometimes we will have to deal with somebody this way. Sometimes, so it's more subjective. But it's to bring harmony, making decisions. Think a little bit about your last job. What type of decisions did you make? And do they relate to your T or your F? I want to write that down. And finally, we get to lifestyle, judging.
John, can I just make a comment? I think it's really important for, in people who are Fs, a lot of decisions are made on the basis of values. And so, because then that goes to culture and other kinds of analysis that you look at for accepting a job. But people with strong value systems often fall on the F side. And and they will then work in organizations and make decisions about taking a job in maybe a not-for-profit or an organization that's probably championed for having a very high value system versus one that is not so much.
So before I move on, I want to bring home into the conversation. Not too much tonight, but I do have an example that might resonate. When people go through this and they start understanding, if you and start understanding themselves, they'll notice that sometimes their spouse is different. And Myers and Briggs will say opposites attract. If opposites can attract, and that is healthy, and I'll try to explain that when I'm done talking here. I'll bring Kathy, my wife. So it's time to go to the grocery store. And we were there yesterday. She's up and down the aisle, and she's got to make decisions what she's going to buy. John, grab that gallon of milk. I can guarantee you, we've been married many, many years. I've gone to grocery shopping with her many, many times. I grab that gallon of milk, and before it is in the cart, she asks me, what's the expiration date on it? I'll pull her chain a little bit, and she, do you think they sell updated milk here? I want the freshest milk. That's the criteria, very objective. The other way she's objective is, like we're buying tomato sauce for lasagna. She doesn't care if it's Hunt's or Roundy's or what. what's the price? Kathy's very objective in making her decision. You look a little bit about what she does. She's a registered nurse and she deals a lot with medicines and prescriptions and all that. She can't afford to make a mistake. Her T in making decisions is very evident. So John, you go to the store. I can't go. So I will get a list every time I go. And if you are, I haven't got the J's yet, but J's like to make lists. So she'll give me the list. And I come home. I guarantee you she will be there to help me unpack the groceries. She pulls this out of the bag and she says, "This wasn't on the list, why'd you buy it?" And I'll say, I'm an F. I'll say, "It tasted good. It was on sale. We haven't had this for a while. But John, we don't need this. Let's put it in the pantry cap. We'll use it." So I go about making my decisions. I don't know what values are there, Dan, but I do, I'm an F, and that's how I go about making my decisions. Is that I'm a fairly strong F. I need help from a T in making decisions, because I don't have that, I'm not wired that way. And so that if I look at who supports me besides Kathy, I want my surgeon, my accountant, my lawyer, my stockbroker, anybody who's going to make a decision on me, I want them to be extremely strong T's. I want them to be very objective in making the decisions on me. Likewise, sometimes Kathy, in struggling with the decision, she will ask, "Well, what do you think?" And I don't give her an answer where it is very clear to her in my analysis that this is an objective decision. But sometimes it does help her out in situations. So my point is that as a spouse, we feed off of each other when we're opposite each other. And I have a final comment on that when I get done with the fourth preference. So we take pride, or we're happy with who we are as an F, but I'm telling you, I come up 0 on the T side making decisions. I need support there. And so if another person can see that, that's very helpful in a relationship. Let's go on then, and I'll come back to this in just a minute. Let's go to the J or the P. The J, a key word there, it's called lifestyle. The J absolutely wants to be organized. If there's a strong word for that, they want to be organized. The P goes with the flow. The P goes with the flow. So that those who want it, the J's, who are fairly strong J's and feel organized, at work you look at their calendar, it's filled every day.
Yes.
Filled every day, every day. And just if you're one of these people, hang with us. When you lose the job, that calendar's blank. What am I going to do tomorrow? And so that is one of the emotions that comes about in the job search. How do I fill this empty space? And how you fill this empty space, one of the ways is coming to meetings like this and getting involved with groups and other people. Getting involved with groups and other people. I'm a P. And I could talk about how we go about making decisions at home. But Kathy's very organized. There was one time where I didn't have an agenda. And she said, "What are you going to do today?" I said, "I don't know." She said, "Why don't you go down the basement and clean the basement?" That would be. Well, I didn't have a better answer for her. So I went down the basement, and by the end of the week, looking pretty good. Painted the floor, the walls, and got things moved around. And I often tell people, to this day, I look at that floor, damn, that floor looks good. I wouldn't have done that without her influence, without her sense of organization and her J. And on the other hand, where I go with the flow with the P, there are times where there is sudden change. And that could be a death in the family. Or that could be some very emotional event. And, you know, that is one of my strengths, where I can support her in the J. There's nothing about being organized when that happens. And so that we work together in that relationship. So here's what Myers and Briggs say, and then we're going to go on to the next slide. Opposites attract, and that can be very healthy if, number one, we have the same goal. Number one, we have the same goal. And number two, in my little story, I let Kathy be Kathy, and Kathy lets John be John. And in coming to the conclusion on anything, it's a win-win. It's not a win-lose. We end up disagreeing, arguing, sharing our, you know, how we feel. But we have a goal, in our case, marriage, for quite a long time. We have a goal that's stronger than whatever it is. So we have to have the same goal in mind. If you don't have the same goal in mind, you know, then we're going to end up with a win-lose. And you think a little bit about that at work. Is that, you know, you need alignment with the boss to understand what is the work that needs to be performed. And that becomes a performance goal. And so that at the end of the year, no matter what kind of grade I got on it, we're talking about that subject. But we work with a boss who's not very good and saying, well, just work hard. You know, that sets us up for a win-lose at some point in time when somebody is trying to judge performance. So, last comment on that, if you are J, probably want a performance appraisal program there that will measure, in a very objective, you're a TJ, you want to be measured very objectively. So, a little bit about the definitions. Are we okay with this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What I would like to do next is go to the next there we go. The next two pages are stapled together. And I would like you to take the yellow markers that I put on the table, and I'd like you to highlight what words under your preference you think are you. And caution you that not every word has to be you. Doesn't have to, every word doesn't have to be you, but take a highlighter and highlight the words that you think are you under, not that sheet.
Which one?
Mm-hmm. It's this one right here. Freshman, you like your E, you said before you like to work with people.
I do like to work with people, but I like that quiet space too, so it's kind of like that.
Okay. What's the difference in the numbers between your E and the I?
Everything's 9 and 11.
9 and 11, pretty close.
So.
Okay. So how do you use this? Well, think a little bit about going into an interview and they ask you, do you have any questions? So if you take a look at, without referring to Myers-Briggs, but if you take a look at what you highlighted here, maybe you can somehow explore, when you're given that chance, do you have any questions, to explore some of this to help you make a good decision. How about the I? Who's an I? Do you have any finding words there?
Finding words? Absolutely. Don't judge me, guys. Actually, I mean, I do keep a lot of my thoughts in a lot of quiet, private space, right? Trying to recognize this, that I'm not keeping client phone calls and choose if I'm concentrating on a task. You know, the phone call, if I'm doing something, I'll
keep
just
calling him.
I don't appreciate the phone calls. I just kind of put it to the side, right? I focus on what's out there. I develop ideas through reflection. I'll go on road trips and just think through situations or tasks. Like working by myself or in small groups. In a big group, I'll be quiet and I'll listen to everyone.
Good, thank you. My son Mark is an I, not the one that works at Abbott, but he's an I. And he last year made a move from Motorola Solutions to Morningstar. And at Motorola Solutions, he had an office and blah, 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 and all that. And he went to Morningstar, and they have an open work environment. And everybody sits at a cube. Everybody. And Mark shares with me, he said, that's a little bit uncomfortable. I like my space and my privacy to work on some pretty important stuff. So, again, in the interview process, and somebody said, well, let me give you a tour of the place. Oh, open environment here. How's that work? Oh, we love it or like it. Inside you're saying to yourself, I don't know if I'd be comfortable with this. So again, there are ways to explore it. Who's an S? Somebody else, different. Who's an S? The S is here. Look at some of the words you use. Sensing.
Doing things with a practical bent. Prefer continuation of what is with fine tuning.
Okay. What type of work did you do in your most recent job?
I'm an environmental health and safety
Okay.
leader.
And you like facts? Big
I like that.
facts and figures. There you go. How about the N? Who's an N? What words did you highlight? Any words?
I highlighted, like solving new complex problems, enjoy challenge of learning something new, doing things with an innovative bent, proceed in bursts of energy.
Okay, and what did you do in your most recent job?
I managed a publications group.
Okay. Okay, something new? You like things that are new?
It was new, initially it was new.
Okay. And I could keep going through the others, and I'm not because of the sake of time for tonight. But, as you're doing this exercise, you can just say, okay, done, go home. But trust me, if you go back and look at some of this and and you're preparing for an interview and you want to get a feel of what it's like around here, if culture is important to you, there's a lot of ways to go after culture by some of this feedback you're getting from your preferences. So I won't spend any more time on these 2 pages, but I do ask you to take a look at them again when you get home. So then let's take a look at this page here. It's got your 16 types on. And, these are traits. These are traits that are associated with your type. Take a quick read of your type. And now I'm going to come back to the people who had tied scores. And I told you to write down both preferences. So, take a look at the ISTJ and the ESTJ. If the difference is the E and the I. And you'll see some of each, so to speak. Now take a look at the traits for your type. And again, I won't ask you for feedback here. You can read this, and I guess I will ask you, does this make sense to people here? Or are you fighting this? Are you disagreeing with this? It's another piece of information that goes into what your total value proposition is going to look like. The last handout that I have for you is this sheet here. And it talks a little bit about careers. It talks about occupations by Myers-Briggs study. So that there's, and it comes from You're What You Are, and that's the reference point where I got this. But if you take a look at, for instance, and by the way, on the first page, if you're an ISTJ, it's written in because I discovered the hole punch, knocking off the 4 letters. But there's a lot of occupations for each of the types. And it takes, you gotta go, the E's are on the other side, actually there's 2 pages, 2 sides, so you gotta find your type. Now, a comment on that. When you, yeah, also, I thought, I guess it's cute, but, you know, they got little sayings. The ISTJ would say, take my time and do it right. And you'll see the headline for each of your types, how the type is characterized. A comment on here, I'm just looking at the ISTJ, and my eyes go down, and it says, somewhere I just saw it. There's a military officer. Here it is, under sales and service, military officer.
Yes.
You know, at my age, is this saying that I should go into the military? No. But it's just giving you some examples of people who are in the military who are ISTJs. So I want you to just take a look at the types of careers under your type. Then let's think a little bit about where I'm going to work. Where I'm going to work. Once I understand my type, those 4 preferences, you know, as you are assessing an opportunity with a company, try in your mind or a piece of paper, try to do a Myers-Briggs on the company. Try to do a Myers-Briggs on the company and see how I fit. And here I'll personalize it a little bit, and we can certainly help you if you want that type of help. So I worked for a company called Verix in Madison, Wisconsin. It's a mortgage insurance company. And we were bought by Greyhound early on there. And at the time, Greyhound was huge, just a huge corporation. Start with the Greyhound buses, but it had so many different types of businesses. I mean, I think it was 5, 6 different divisions. I mean, it was huge, bureaucratic, full of policies and procedures. And then I left Verix and came down to Deerfield and worked for NutraSweet. I almost didn't get hired at NutraSweet because people stereotyped me because I came from Greyhound. And little did they know that, you know, it was my Myers-Briggs type at Greyhound, the Greyhound company, that I had to adapt. NutraSweet was more my style, and they just had to see me in action. But if I were to try to do a Myers-Briggs on the 2 companies, the E or the I, Greyhound is a publicly held company. They're in Wall Street. They're in the news all the time. They're very well known. Greyhound is an E. You look at NutraSweet, where they get their energy from, in the laboratories, creating at the time, you know, something out of aspartame, which became known as NutraSweet. So NutraSweet was an I-type company. Just the nature of their business. Then we look at Greyhound and NutraSweet, the S or the N. Greyhound, because they were so subject to Wall Street, you know, they were always thinking about with the end in mind. You know, what's Wall Street going to say to them when we come in with our financial results? Greyhound was an N. They were always thinking about what it will be when they get there. NutraSweet, by the very nature of science in the laboratories, NutraSweet was very factually driven, and that wore off on everybody in their work, in whatever they were doing. There was an expectation that people would speak with facts. Going about making decisions. Greyhound, because of the bureaucracy there and the largeness, very much of a T, thinking you made objective decisions that had consequences. I'm going to back off on that. Haven't done this for a while. I'm going to characterize Greyhound as an N, as a F. I'm uncomfortable doing that too. To be reviewed by the FDA. So their decision-making, both companies were the same. And then I go to how they like to live their life. Greyhound, because of its size, was overwhelming with policies and procedures. So the left hand knew what the right hand was doing. At NutraSuite, we had no policies except one. As our CEO at the time said, he's a lawyer, he said, I do not like employment policies, none. He said, except we have to have one. It's a vacation policy, so I know how much to pay you when you leave. NutraSuite was very entrepreneurial. Go with the flow. Protected by a patent. And so they were P. So again, because we work with this, it's fairly easy for me to stand up here and do this. This is maybe new for you, but it is a way, if you ever want to consult with us, it is a way of assessing what's the MBTI type for the company that I'm interviewing with, and what's my type, and how am I going to interface with that company if I join them. The sheet that the other sheet that I mentioned to you that John's going to send you is this sheet, and I really would encourage you to put your type, your most significant preference, the meaningful words. You did some of that tonight. And is there a related career choice that strikes you? Sheet, or maybe it's not on that sheet. Write it down. This is the third sheet. First two in this sheet. Bring those back when we're working on your value proposition. This will influence you. In fact, I would, if you're a J, you've probably done this already, but you notice that the sheets are hole punched. You may want to just create a folder and keep all the sheets so that when we get to that night on the value proposition, you can go back and look at all of those. So what we tried to do tonight is give you an insight into your Myers-Briggs type and each of your four preferences. And I think I've spent a little bit enough time to start getting you thinking about how do you understand that and explore that in the interview process to get the right job. And then once you're working, am I happy in what I'm doing? And just maybe you're working with somebody with a different type. That's it for tonight. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So we're okay for the books, 16. So I conclude, and I will do this every time. When I talk about successes, they don't necessarily have to be always job related. But I would encourage each of us, before we go to sleep at night or the first thing we wake up in the morning, is reflect on where was I successful yesterday. And it can be something as simple as I discovered a new way to drive to the grocery store. That's a success. But what we want to do, and I'm working on our PMA, a positive mental attitude, is that we just want to drill that into us. Is that it's just these little steps of success. That breeds bigger steps of success. It does a lot of other things to increase our confidence and all of that. So thank you for those who offered that to us. John, you were going to have some comment tonight about anybody new here in the...
Oh yeah, is this the first time they're joining us? Okay, so just for your awareness, what we do is we send around this sign-up sheet, and if you've been in a previous meeting, your name should show up here and you can just check the box. And, so it's real easy. If it's your first time, you flip all the way to the back and we ask you to give us your name.
So when we left last time, I asked John to send 2 or 3 attachments which normally should have been part of the hard copy and homework. And I just wanted to, you recognize that captured top 4 values and priorities, motivators, life balance, and personal needs. Be sure you complete this sheet, because we're gonna, at the end, when we put together our value proposition, we're gonna wanna go back and look at that sheet. So hold on to that, can be an important piece of information to each of us here. Where am I today? Beyond this. Here we go. So first session. That was the exam, we did those handouts. And the third document that John sent to you, that we asked you to complete, I hope you brought that along with you tonight. What is your Myers-Briggs type? Remember there are 4 letters. And the letters represent preferences. It was the E or the I, the S or the N, the T or the F, and the J or the P. So we had a preference between one or the other. And those 4 preferences add up then to 4 letters for our type. And I'd ask for a couple people just to share with the group what your Myers-Briggs type is and what it means to you, and does it make any sense to what it is you want to do next? Does anybody want to help me out and share their Myers-Briggs type? If you don't have the whole sheet completed, just give me the type, I'll help you. Anybody? Oh my gosh. We have 2 volunteers.
They were sitting right next to each other.
Okay,
I'm an ENFP.
ENFP.
Yeah.
As you,
There'll be NFPs.
okay, as you read all the descriptors, anything pop out at you?
It made a lot of sense to me. It also makes sense to me why I wasn't happy at my last job.
Talk,
Wasn't a
without
good fit.
talking about company or job,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
was
yeah.
it that made you understand that you weren't happy?
My personality likes certain things, and those things were not offered by that position
Mhm.
at that company. So my need for independence and to do some problem solving and move things forward fast were not available.
Okay,
I was impatient.
okay, fair enough. So there's a lot of, maybe some structure to the company that you worked with,
Lots of structure.
a lot of policies.
Yes, quite a bit.
And I want you to hold on to that, and I'm speaking to the whole group, but I want you to hold on to that as you go into interviews. You know, that's you, it's been validated. So what your job in an interview is to say, I gotta find out what the culture is in this organization.
I'm an ISTJ.
ISTJ.
Yeah.
What words, come on in, join us.
So, as far as an introvert, extrovert, I'm just like 1 over.
One over,
That
so
makes me,
E or I.
yeah. And then my S, T, and J all scored the same, you know, as far as what they are. But the words are, you know, I think, I do, I think again, which describes me. I do things with a practical bent, you know,
Okay.
looking at facts. I'm very logical, you know, reason things out that
Okay.
make sense. And then I'm organized and I keep focused on what needs to be accomplished.
And what is it you want to do next?
Well, I work in the area of quality and compliance, regulatory
Okay.
compliance. Fits right in there.
It's right in there.
Yeah, and that's what I like doing. I like process improvements, setting up processes, helping with compliance. I like project work a little bit more than I like being the day-to-day person
Mhm.
in, you know, quality or compliance. So
So as you, everybody listening to her, hearing, look at the richness of what she's got to speak to in an interview. That's perfect, that's great. And again, this is one of the, what you get out of doing a Myers-Briggs type. It starts to frame out my comfort zone in terms of where I want to work or mostly what it is I want to do. One more, anybody else has an example? One more. Okay.
I'm ISFJ.
ISFJ. What
And-
words resonated with you?
The traits, just, I'm kind of a people person, more sympathetic as a team leader. I have a tendency to try and make sure that the people are being taken care of, being challenged. And so that one really stuck with me because that's what's been important to me.
So the preference that you're speaking to is the F, in terms of making decisions.
Right.
Empathetic in working with people. Keep going.
The thing I found the most intriguing was that when you take a look at the job list that lines up with it, I'm not even close to what I've been doing.
Okay. And it wasn't meant to be a comprehensive list, but it, sometimes what I'll say to people, if you don't find your quote job title on that list, take a look at the industry that it represents. Maybe my Myers-Briggs indicates that there are a lot of internists or doctors. Well, there's no way I'm going back to school at this age to become a doctor or an internist or a surgeon. But maybe it's suggesting that if there are a lot of doctors that are that type, maybe I should look at healthcare and use in my case, my core competency would be human resources. And I maybe would have a comfort in that type of culture, assuming that doctors are happy in what they do and where they work. So there's a second way that you can look at that. Look at the industry that the job title represents. Very good. Thank you. One last time. So I'm sitting here trying to guess. A lot of you were here last time. Did you not do your homework? Or you're just shy and bashful?
I'm an introvert.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it at that. So this is the third sheet that I would like you to bring back in the last session as well, because I'd like you to be able to look at your notes. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about competencies. I hope each of you brought your resume. It doesn't have to be a finished resume. We'll be addressing that in a couple meetings down the road. But for the sake of what we want to accomplish tonight, if you've got a resume and you have some accomplishments on your resume, we're home. We're in. I do believe that understanding your competencies absolutely brings clarity to your value proposition. This is an important session. Understanding competencies is very important. And what we will try to do in the next meeting, when we discuss strength finders, is we will try to look at your 5 themes, which are strengths, and correlate those to your 5 strongest competencies. So, important session tonight. So you've seen this many times. This is our roadmap. In the first meeting, we discussed the values, priorities, motivators, life balance, personal needs. And again, last time we looked at Myers-Briggs. We will do accomplishments and competencies tonight, and the next meeting will deal with strength finders. Again, from a date point of view, it's February 1st, the 15th. We meet the 1st and 3rd Wednesdays of each month. So our next meeting is February 15th. We will conclude the value proposition part of this first Wednesday in March 8th. And then we will talk about creating a compelling resume on this third Wednesday of the month, March 22nd. Again, I'm trying to summarize. Most of you maybe were here, some of you were not, but just to bring our thinking up to date. When we looked at values and priorities, one comment I made is that the values that you identify as critical, those are non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. Third time, non-negotiable as you decide to accept a job offer. If you really mean, if I really mean that these are my values, that's really deep inside of me. And it's important then that I be able to understand that my values will be valued inside that organization. The motivators, it's healthy to just sit and reflect back on either the type of boss or the type of company that I've worked with in the last 10 years, 12 years. And so that's going to be many different people or instances. What motivated me mostly? What made me feel good getting in the car at 6:30 in the morning, driving to work and saying, I'm going to have fun today? Now, fun means something very different to almost everybody in the room. But whatever that enjoyment is in work, I'm motivated. I can feel energized. And I think you all know individually what I mean when you feel energized. That's what we want in a job, in a next job. So we sit and reflect on either the type of management style that I worked under, the type of company and its culture, my own job responsibilities, what motivated me. Achieving life balance, but there are other times that we meet people who indicate that it's out of kilter. There's probably too much work and not enough time left for life and for self. It's interesting as I observe our 4 children and their careers, and I think back to when I was their age, and I'm saying to myself, was I there? One of our daughters leaves for work at 6:45 in the morning. She's a teacher, has to travel to work. She gets home about 4. She's got 2 energized sons, ages 5 and 3, who want to be entertained or do something, let alone what are we having for dinner tonight. Her husband takes the 6 o'clock train into Chicago every day. And I don't know what time he leaves, but he gets home about 6 at night. Not a lot of time, as I observe. And, Dad and father-in-law know enough not to get too involved in that, because I was there at one time. I mean, it's really, we want to be engaged in our career, we want to grow in it, we want to be successful, but it's real easy to have a blind spot. Is that we're taking away from the quality of our whole life. And so as one is in transition, we got choices. And it's okay to make choices that benefit me, benefit you, to give you a better balance. Personal needs, and we talked, we gave you a sheet to complete. What are you looking for in a next job? The type of company, next employer, and then some of the personal needs. And I mentioned to you that hold on to that sheet long after we leave. Use that sheet to manage your career going forward. Inventory, look at that sheet at the end of every year and say, are all of these parameters still valid? Or even before at the end of the year, if something feels uncomfortable to you during the year at work, go back and look at that sheet and say, what is out of kilter here? So it is a way of guiding ourselves through our career and through a maze of maybe difficulties from time to time. Pretty important sheet. In the job search, it's very critical that you do that because, as I indicated that night, some of that information you will use in networking. I almost guarantee you that some of that information will be answers to interview questions that you will receive in an interview. And finally, when you get the job offer, what a great way to match up the job offer to what you identified as your needs. And then we talked a little bit about Myers-Briggs, which we just tried to summarize the meaningful words and related careers. So that's kind of a detailed summary. We got into that. This is what we're going to do tonight. So as we get into tonight, I want to emphasize that we're looking at your existing resume. Tonight's session is not to share ideas about how to build a resume. Dan Barber will be doing that, sharing his insights with you in the next month. So we're just looking at our existing resume, and we can learn from that existing resume. And we want to take a look at the significant accomplishments that you indicate under each of the job titles on your resume. I make a comment here that I think responsibility is being shifted, and not think, I believe. It's being, in managing our career, it's being shifted more to us. And it's just a friendly reminder, a wake-up call. You know, there isn't a such thing as guaranteed employment. Companies do have career paths, family tree, a job tree. I didn't say that quite right, but I think you know what that means. Where in fact I can advance. And I think loyalty is still a good idea to have, to be able to share the fact that you are loyal to what you're doing, but not, it's a loyalty that may not stretch out over 10, 15, 20 years. And I say that because if in fact somebody comes to us and says, you know, we're going to reorganize and your position is going to be eliminated, you know, it's easy to say, well, what happened to all that loyalty? And we just need to readjust our thinking that we are in a changing workplace. And so that we, then I get to what I point on the board, is that we have to manage our careers, each of us, going forward. And what I'm, well, before I get into the editing the accomplishments, you've heard me say this before, and I first heard it when our daughter Megan was graduating from college. Her graduation speaker was like an economist out of Washington, D.C., I think. And he said to the class, he said, some of you have jobs, and he said, some of you don't have jobs. He says, you know, keep the faith, have heart. Those of you that don't have jobs will find jobs. He said, I would like to leave with you an idea or a thought that you're probably going to be changing jobs every 4 or 5 years. Now, Dad said, hearing that and said, after I just paid all this tuition, and he's talking. But it's true. And it was the first time I heard that statistic, and of course I've been very aware of it and I've seen it in print, is that in today's work world, people are changing jobs on average about 4 or 5 times, every 4 or 5 years. Not absolute, but just an average. And he said, oh, I have one last thought. He said, you're going to change careers 3 times in your lifetime. Change careers 3 times. I kind of went away and thought, well, okay, maybe. And that was May. And come the month of June, my recollection, my niece up in Door County she'd been in her job like 2 or 3 years, and she was pretty fortunate. She was managing one of the theaters up there. And she called me and she says, UJ, I quit my job, Uncle John. I said, you quit your job? Of course, I have good memories going up to Door County and seeing all the nice things in the summertime. I said, why did you do that? She says, I'm just looking for something else. And she said, the truth were known, there's too many of you up here in the wintertime. Oh, okay. So where are you going? She said, I'm going to move to Colorado. And so, I made an assumption. I said, have you lined up a theater to work in, or the arts? No, I'm not going to do that anymore. This is like 2 or 3 years out of college. I said, what are you going to do? She said, well, I love to ski. I can bunk in with a friend that's out there, and I'm going to teach little kids how to ski down the hill while their parents are going down the big hills. She said, and then I'll figure it out. She went through that thought process, and I give Laura a lot of credit. She went back to school, completed her second degree, and today she's a registered nurse. I said, doggone it. There's an example in our own family of changing careers within 5 years of finishing her education. So, and getting back to the importance of managing our career going forward. Stay on top of it. Which leads me then to the point that I have here, inventory your accomplishments annually. As Dan and I work with people that have lost a job and they say, you know, one of the things you could really help me with is I got to write a resume. And interestingly enough, there are some people who have been in a job for quite a while, they don't have a resume, 0. And what most of the people are saying is that their resume is out of date. And I share with you that causes stress. Now, if you like that kind of stress, then I guess you don't have to update your resume. But the stress comes about is that they can't remember, a person can't remember all the neat things that they did. And the way to overcome that is you just take a look at, bring out the resume, and you don't have to retype everything, but take a piece of paper and say, what are the neat things that I accomplished this year that I could add to my resume? Do that once a year. And of course, if you have a performance appraisal, maybe some of that is even validated even more. This is money in the bank. I'm telling you that it will alleviate stress if, in fact, in a moment's time, you need a resume and you have to update it. It takes all the thinking out of it because you're on top of it. I want to talk a little bit about the difference between a job responsibility, which is part of a job description, and an accomplishment. The job responsibility is work that relates directly to the job title. So you have a job description, and has all these responsibilities. Those responsibilities, in sum, represent the job title. The accomplishment statement illustrates unique proof that you performed or achieved in that specific responsibility. Make sense? So you have a job title, and there's usually a little bit of a summary description of what you're responsible for, and then they have all the primary responsibilities. If you go into an interview with just that, verbalizing it, the interviewer said, well, yeah, that sounds good, but you know what? That's what every financial analyst does. What about you? What makes you unique? And what makes us unique are these accomplishments. And so I am putting a little bit of emphasis tonight just for you to take a look at your accomplishments. We're going to focus on them. But again, in terms of how they're written and all of that, I'll leave that to Dan and his presentation. We okay on the difference between a responsibility and an accomplishment? Another statistic. As we are looking at the marketplace, we're looking at our resume, the marketplace seems to value most what we've done in the last 10 years. And for someone to say, you mean I got to minimize the stuff I did 15 years ago? That was really hot stuff. It's not a value anymore. Why? Because you probably don't want to go back and do that, even though it was a lot of fun. And or how you did it is outdated. So again, the marketplace takes a look at what we've done in the last 10 years. So as you're looking at your resume, look at the job titles and the accomplishments that reflect the last 10 years. The marketplace says that's where you and I bring the most value.
What about if you've been in a position for more than 10 years, still just hone in on those 10 years of, what you've really accomplished in that time?
I probably would, yes. You have depth of experience, in whatever that is. No, there's a couple exceptions. There are some people who would say, I've been in this work for 10 years, I need to do something different. And that's okay. But out of that work that you did in the 10 years, you need to identify what we call your transferable skills. So what skills that you accumulated in those 10 years can transfer into some other type of work. So, and those will be less than what you've accomplished in the 10 years. But for the most part, if you're in an interview, the interviewer will probably be expecting you to be talking about the job that you just left, thinking that you want to do something similar to that. And if you want to do something different, and again, there's nothing wrong with that, people need to be able to explain why they want to do something different. Now we're getting into some of the specifics of interviewing. We're not going to go tonight. Yes?
One thing I've been working on recently is drafting another resume filled out with volunteer work. And I just wanted to mention that because I've taken a lot of initiative and learned a lot and taken on projects. So
Okay.
I think it's important that I have that prepared.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes that, again, Dan will talk about that, I'm probably on page 2 of the resume. A general comment is that all the information on our resume qualifies us to be hired into our next job. Okay, so I'm not saying it's right or wrong that you do that, that's good. I compliment you for being involved in not-for-profit or volunteering. We should have more people that do that. But if space is precious on a resume and it's not aligned with what you want to do, then you may have to make a tough decision. Do I want to put it on the resume or not? Or verbalize it in the interview.
Yeah, no, I've been thoughtful about it.
Good. Again, I compliment you for stepping out and helping others or volunteering. So we've talked about accomplishments. Now we're going to shift our conversation to the word competency. There's a competency in each of our accomplishments. What does the competency mean? It's a measurable or observable pillar. It drives the accomplishment to completion. I should have had an example to follow this, but design and develop metrics which measure the financial performance on a 12-month basis. Design and develop is not necessarily a competency. But what do you design and develop? It's metrics. And what are the metrics? The metrics are financial metrics. Now, if I'm interviewing for a financial position, that's what I'm being paid to do. And so that's where I'm going with this, is that we are paid, our salary that we earn is justified by the ability to perform our competencies. So not to rush ahead, but to just stop for a second. When we look at the employer and their job description, they've got primary responsibilities, obviously not accomplishment. They have primary responsibilities. Each one of those responsibilities has a competency that's needed to get that responsibility done. So the commonality of this concept of competency, it is a pillar, a driver that will allow one to perform that responsibility. The competency is a pillar or driver that allowed us to perform and complete an accomplishment. So I'm going to get more into competencies, but That is a focus tonight. That is the focus, and it's an important one. Well, I don't have it here in the slides. We want a competency-based resume, and that's kind of where we're going to drive to. Why? Because the employer has competency-based interview questions. And for those of you that have experienced this, they're called behavioral interview questions. So if we're going to be successful in preparing for a behavioral interview, we have to identify the competencies in the job description before we go into the interview. Take those competencies in the job description and match it up with the competencies in my resume, and now I'm reasonably prepared for a behavioral interview question. So it's a pretty important concept. Any questions on that as I just start to move in? Has anybody here not heard of the concept of a competency? It was okay if you haven't. We have 5 definitions. Any help, guys? Forgot I had handouts. Oh. This is the first handout. Bill, you want to hand those up? I haven't counted people. There's 25 handouts based on people who've been attending.
29
Including yourself and myself, or 29. So I'd ask first the participants tonight to take one, and the steering committee not to hold back. And I will need to know where we come up short if we do.
One more.
Bill's got the last of them. I hope you got a handful.
You got a spare, Bill? Oh, really?
So Bill, if you have a couple more left, then you can give those to the steering committee. So what I have on the board, pardon? Oh, we don't have them here. Bill, I take it back. If you have extras, we need them here. You have extras? 1, 2, one more here. And then what do we have left? No, we got, we're okay. So it looks like we got 1 extra.
Did you get one?
They need one over there? Okay. And I'll need to know who didn't get one tonight, and I'll have to probably have other copies made available. Stop in the parish office to pick them up, but let me talk about that at the end. So the first page of what you've got here is the 5 definitions of a competency. A competency is defined as knowledge, or skill, or leadership, a personal trait, or past experience. And what I want to do, well, I've got this up here, is talk a little bit about a job posting. So a competency is defined as a knowledge. If you go to a job posting, usually in the qualifications section, there's some type of knowledge that's required. Competency is defined as a skill. When you're talking about the primary responsibilities, there are 8 or 10 of them, those are all probably skill-based. There's a skill-based competency in each one of those responsibilities. When we talk about leadership, it usually talks a little bit about our impact on people. Now, there are some jobs that are individual contributors where we don't lead people, we don't supervise people. And then there are other jobs that, might be titled like a project manager or supervisor or manager, director, vice president, a CEO. Leadership has a different definition for each of those job titles. But many people have an element of leadership in their jobs. And again, you will find that probably in the primary responsibilities. Sometimes in the summary, it will indicate that this job will manage a staff of 7. That's a leadership competency. Personal trait, highly organized. That type of trait many times will show up in the qualifications section. Sometimes it could appear up here in the summary. And then extensive period of time, either in a job or an industry, that usually is in the qualifications section. Now, I'd like to make a comment on that before I move away from this. Let's say 4 to 5 years of experience in, and you got 4 or 3, apply for it. 4 or 5 years of experience in, you got 6, apply for it. If what you're reading here says, try to avoid some frustration, don't apply for it. Because there is a pretty good chance that you're going to be perceived as being underqualified. So companies are not rigid when they say 4 to 5 years. They'll compromise based on how well we project ourselves in the interview. Same with the other place that they sometimes will compromise is in degrees. Well, a bachelor's, but master's preferred. We show enough experience, we bring forward enough experience, they're fine with a bachelor's degree. They'll move away from the master's degree. Now I say that, but that's not valid all the time. If we're talking about somebody applying for a medical position or a lawyer, legal position, those are pretty cut and dry. They're not going to compromise on those types of educational backgrounds. So what we want to have in our mind as tonight we're going to do a little bit of an exercise as we're looking at our accomplishments. Does it represent the knowledge? Does it represent a skill? Does it represent some type of leadership, working with people, supervising people? Does the accomplishment deal with a trait that we have? Or do we somehow express our experience? So you hold on to this sheet as we move towards the later part of the meeting. Not to be inclusive, and I didn't include these sheets, so I'll leave it up here if you want to take some notes. But what are companies looking for in knowledge? Again, many times, almost all the time, it refers to some type of degree or some type of certification or maybe some type of licensing. But I put up there professional development. You may have taken a program in change management, managing change, managing conflict. That can very well be part of a job posting, the need to manage change. Well, you have some background, maybe you don't have a lot of experience managing change, but you understand how to go about it. You have some knowledge about it. We talked a little bit about job roles, and again, from a knowledge point of view, I don't know why I always move to finance, but those are all the different types of functions. But the depth of knowledge, the person who has just graduated from college and has a job as an accountant or a financial analyst. And then that food chain of the person I'm talking about goes up to a boss who's got a job title of CFO. Chief Financial Officer. The Chief Financial Officer has a very broad knowledge of what finance is about. Financial analyst and accountant is just starting to accumulate that knowledge. So there is some validity. There's a lot of validity to how well do we understand the function. It will relate to the type of job title that I'm applying to. And you will see reference to that primarily in, I believe you'll see that in the qualifications section of a job posting. But those are just, and again, not meant to be inclusive, comprehensive, but those are ideas about how we would identify knowledge in a job posting. We talk a little bit about skills and ability, and it's something that we do well. This is endless. There's enough here to fill this page, and I don't really know if you need to copy all these, but it deals with our skills. It's something that we do well. And again, those are just a couple different examples.
Could these be could we get an email with these slides maybe, or no?
We don't
Okay.
send the presentations out electronically. That's why I'm taking a little time to, if anybody wants to take a couple notes. What we do hand out in the meeting, we hope, is the basis to complete your homework. So beyond skills, we talked about leadership, and in a job posting, they may refer to ethics or value. They may talk a little bit about the ability to have vision. What is this business going to look like 3 years from now? Or some jobs have fiscal accountability. Some leadership positions at a C level probably have a responsibility to develop a policy. Political savvy, financial metrics, dealing with the P&L. And there I just make a comment. Sometimes we meet people who say, well, I have P&L responsibility. And I'm going to take a little bit of time to have that person explain to me what you mean by that. Because as you look at organizations, there are a couple jobs that have both the revenue and the expense side responsibility. And those many times are at a C-level type job. But there are many of us, and here's where we got to be careful, where we have a big impact on revenue, or we have a big impact on expenses. But it's one or the other, it's not both. So we got to be careful when we say we have P&L responsibility that we can back that up to show how we impact both revenues and expenses. And at a very high level, leadership also could speak to board interaction. Personal traits: adaptable, flexible, listening, speaking, and writing. They talk about our ability to communicate. I may have mentioned this in another meeting, but don't underestimate the impact when it says you need to demonstrate good communication skills. If you are in a position where you need to write memos, policies, marketing material, they really mean it. We need to be able to write information that is understood by somebody else. When they talk a little bit about being able to speak, explore that in the interview. Maybe it means you need to give a presentation to a group of people on a regular basis, or make a presentation to a management group, or a board of directors, or one of the federal agencies. So there are a lot of jobs where, being able to communicate verbally as well as writing is very important. So the reason I bring this up is that every job posting has something to do with communicating. Try to figure out what they mean by that. There is a meaning. So again, some personal traits. And finally, experience. There may be some reference to B2C or B2B. We want experience in a corporate setting or a division setting. Is profit or not for profit? And I didn't talk about public or private there. If all of our experiences in public, just kind of think, what's my strategy to say that I can work in a private company? If all of my experience is for profit, what's my strategy to say that I'd like to work in a not-for-profit? And so from the interviewer's point of view, they're saying, well, you have a strong orientation in a for-profit, but you don't understand us in a not-for-profit. And that's where the prime example, what you heard tonight, put in your volunteering experiences. If in fact you're going to look at a not-for-profit, absolutely show that. Because it demonstrates that you've been there. So there's a pretty strong bias as you're interviewing. Profit or not-for-profit, public or private. If most of your career has been in one of those sectors, it's better. It's not impossible to move to the other side, but you have to have a strategy to describe why you're doing that or what you want to do. The one page on, the one comment on here that was also in the last sheet, your personal needs, we spoke to employer size. And I'll repeat it again here. Companies will, in their job posting, will describe their revenues probably up in the summary, not the job summary. There's a section there that describes the company. We are a $750 million company. As we go into the interview, there is a little bit of a bias on the company's part that they want people that have worked in that range of revenues. So, and I also want to point out that, if you take a company like Abbott, the big umbrella, zillions, a lot of zeros. But as you work in one of their business units, there's less zeros. And if that's where your experience has been, that's really what you want to be able to sell. Because I've worked in this range of revenues. If you work in human resources, the metric usually is number of employees. And again, it's usually within a range. Or in finance assets. So you do want to be conscious of those metrics in terms of what it meant, where you came from, and where it is you want to go. Any comment or reaction to that? So what we're doing here, we're just giving you some examples. There's no way you can write a comprehensive list of them. We will show you in, there it is. The first comment is that as I'm looking for a competency in either a primary responsibility or one of my accomplishments, it's usually a noun. It's usually a noun. It could be a strong verb, action verb. It could be, they're looking for, I suggest there's 3 ways, and this is going to be, I think this is a handout. There's 3 ways that you can get a handle around the competencies in a job. And one of the ways you could do that is go to Google and Google your most recent job title and the related job competencies. Another way is to use technology, and I'll explain all these to you, to create a word cloud around 3 different similar jobs that you found on job boards. And again, I'll explain that all to you. And finally, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to take a look at our resume. And I'll give you some highlighters, and we're going to take a look at your accomplishments and see if you can highlight the competencies in each of your accomplishments on your resume. And we won't do your whole resume, we're just going to do 3 or 4 of them. And then I'm going to ask each of you to pair off with each other and learn from each other as to your definition versus what the other person sees, and maybe you can learn from each other tonight. So that's where I'm going to go with this. I went to Google, and I Googled business analyst. And that, assuming that was my most recent job title, and that's, those are my options. And so then I clicked, I didn't want business analyst salary or jobs or certifications, I clicked on business analyst. And this is right from that posting. It was on Indeed, it was Google. Business analyst, remembering on the right side, you've got a copy of this, I believe. Do you?
Yes.
Good. The competencies are knowledge, skill, leadership, experience, or trait. So I start reading the response to primary job duties. Screen, categorize, evaluate, and reconcile. All verbs. Yeah, they're important to get something done. But what is the something that has to be done? And so now I see reports. Well, reports is a noun. And resolves data integrity issues. So I, to begin with, would start to highlight reports and data integrity as two competencies that this job, financial analyst, or business analyst, deals with. Second responsibility, interprets generally defined practices and methods and applies them to the customer's environment. I probably could have highlighted customer's environment. I probably should have as an important competency. Practices and methods, that's a skill. Work in a large-scale SOA solutions, which I don't know what it is, but it is a noun. Those of you in technology maybe know that. For a large, complex, automated information system. There's your competency. Automated information system. Experience in utilizing COTS products, identified as the following operating systems. IBM, AIX, Solaris, OS. Those are the competencies. I told you almost every job posting has this. Excellent writing communication skills to assist in the creation of project-related documentation. I missed it. There's a competency there, project-related documentation. Oh, I know why I didn't do it. Such as project plans, configuration management, and compliance plans. So, again, I'm just pointing out here that when they talk about communication skills, it's usually related to something that is required of this person in this job. So, let's put this in perspective. This is through Google, okay? And Google is telling us this is what the marketplace, from Google's research, or however they put this together, this is what the marketplace says they're looking for if you're a financial analyst. So I'm going to suggest to you, and we'll be repeating this, our resume needs to demonstrate what the marketplace needs. And this is a little bit of a break in thinking about our resume. Early on tonight, I talked a little bit about, how do you condense information that is old, that is older than 10 years. You may even find some information on your resume that you did in the last 5 years. If the marketplace doesn't need it for the job you're looking for, as great as it is in my mind, and as excited as I was when I did it, it's as no value to the marketplace. So what we're doing is we're going out and listening to the market and saying, what do they need? And then we're going to come back and customize our resume so that it speaks to that. Does that make sense? So you could, one way to do this, you could Google the job title that you had, if you didn't, before you look at your resume.
What if you had a really goofy title that makes no sense to anybody?
Really.
Well, maybe then you go here. So I don't know if anybody has heard of tagcrowd.com. Okay, it's a free software. And that should be in your handout. What I recommend to people that they do is go out and look for those three goofy job titles. I do believe there's job postings for almost every job in the country. I may have to dig a little bit or have some help saying, well, you call it that, but it's really this. But find 3 jobs in the marketplace that reflect what you've done. And use this software to identify the competencies. So if you just follow me in doing this, I've got 3 jobs out in the marketplace. That's, the example I'm giving you is finance, but I don't know if it was the financial analyst or not. But they're all related. What I want to do in the first box, red number 1, is I want to copy and paste in the entire job posting. The entire job posting. 3 times. I want to copy and paste in each of the 3 postings into that box.
So
in number 1.
Get them all together, all 3
Well,
of them.
you just save them on your computer and just copy it and paste it into 1 and do it 3 times. Okay, now what we're going to assume is that the same job title, or pretty close to it, they should be similar in nature, shouldn't they? You'd think so. So what we want to do then is go to number 2 and make a couple changes. You can get this feedback in English or a number of different languages, your choice. It says, should this technology look at 50 words, or do you want it to look at more than 50 words? And I suggest that you look at either 75 or 100 words that are most used in these 3 descriptions. It asks us, do you want us to show the frequency, the number of times that this word appears in each of these 3? And it's preset for no, change it to yes. In terms of options, that's really all you need to do. The last box down there, it says, are there words that you don't want us to look at? And I've done it both ways, and this is not a deal breaker. But you could type in a, and, the, to, whatever. You know, all these short. They have no meaning in terms of nouns and competencies. So if I were doing it again tonight, I would not fill in that last section. The English, the 75 or 100, and the word has to appear at least twice, and I want to see the frequency. The next thing we do is go up to visualize and hit number 3, and somebody can go over to turn your page, and that's what happens. To that box where you copied and pasted in the 3 jobs. It shows us the words that are used most often. And remember that nouns represent competencies. So just without doing a lot of study here, leadership just screams in this job. Just screams in this job. And you'll see that it's used 11 times in those 3 job descriptions. Again, if this is what the market is looking for in that job, my resume needs to speak to leadership. Because when I get into the interview, that's what they want to probe. And so that, what you can do, and I don't have this laid out in an Excel spreadsheet, but I would recommend if people want to do this, create a small Excel spreadsheet. Leadership is 11. Strategy is 6. Results is 6. Operations is 5. Organization is 5. Plan is 5. And in numerical order of importance, see if you can identify the strongest words. Now again, visually, without showing the number, just by the size of the font, you can tell that. But this is a nifty way of quickly getting a fix on what the marketplace is looking for in terms of competencies. Guarantee you that their job description, and I guarantee you their interview questions are going to relate to about 4 or 5 or 6 of these nouns, which I will describe as competencies.
I'll just make a side comment on that. I think it's getting to the interview because a lot of the same process is following the automatic search engines.
Yes. So, what did I'm with you. I'm agreeing with you. So if we get this intelligence from the marketplace, what I've been saying, to your point, we got to demonstrate that on our resume. And as the company goes through the screening process, there's usually some technology involved, keywords, or the human eyes are looking for that. But beyond, that's how we get from the screening process into a live interview. They've identified enough evidence that this person wants to interview. We should interview this person. That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly.
Thank you for endorsing that. Somebody else was going to say something?
No, I was just going to ask if you could repeat the question. Earlier, it's hard to hear a question back here.
And if you don't hear, do speak up, because that was a good comment. I think the question that, if I'm paraphrasing you, is that this is good to know in terms of what the marketplace needs, but you gotta be sure that you've got that demonstrated or written or evidence in your resume. I think, is that kind of what you said? And I was agreeing. It's making sense?
Josh, you can do it both ways too.
Tonight, we all have many different accomplishments, and I did put that in. I think that we highlighted the accomplishments in the handout in red. We want you to take some time tonight to highlight, if you would, take a look at 4 accomplishments on your resume. And if we don't have it up, maybe you can just circle your competencies on your resume. I'm encouraging you to really understand this and do this exercise. When we go into our program next time, we're going to talk about strength finders. And there's a correlation, hopefully, between strength finder, the results of what you find in strength finder, to what you've identified in your competencies. So, really want to work on this, and net, all of this, it adds tremendously to our value proposition. So you can stay at your table, use your resume, look at your first 4 accomplishments, or 4, and see if you can highlight the competency in each, or 2 competencies, or 3, in each of your accomplishments. Again, knowing that you're going to want to match these competencies up with the competencies you discover in a job description. So before you start on that, just a couple other comments. I want to go back, I didn't mention this. You get comfortable with this software, and you have a final resume, and you're invited in to an interview, and they give you a job description that they're going to speak from. Do this, do a word cloud for the job description, and do a word cloud of the resume you're giving them. And take a look at the 2 word clouds as a way of saying, how closely am I lining up to what they're looking for? And, yes?
There's a program out now, jobscan.co, that allows you to do that.
Okay.
You plug in your resume, you plug in the job, and it gives you all the keywords, and it will tell you where you stand, and the key is to get over 80%. So if you're at 50, then you look at all the words you don't have, and figure out how to adjust.
Yeah,
So John Jennings, if you just make
Jobscan.co.
Jobscan.co.
Jobscan.co. We'll put that into our invitation to the next meeting, and if you look for that, if you didn't write it down tonight, we'll make reference to that. Thank you. Thank you. It's doing the same, it sounds like it's doing the same thing.
Yeah, a gentleman in Washington, D.C., state of Washington created it, and it's going, it's really helpful.
Okay.
It's free for the first 5.
Right. Well, if you buy the cookies out, it's free for
So the sheet that I'd like you to capture your information from beyond tonight is I'd like you to look at all your accomplishments on your resume and identify what you believe are your competencies in your current resume. Again, I'm not encouraging you to redo your resume. Dan will talk a little bit about that later on. But the resume you got right now, just as an exercise, what are use this sheet to capture that. The other piece that I want to talk about before we get into a little bit of homework, or before we work around the tables, strength finders. So where Bill is standing, John Jennings will go over there. We have strength finder books. The people that were here last time, there were 16 of you that indicated that you would like to purchase one. We never know how many people are going to show up, so we did go out and purchase 20 books. and they will be $15 a piece. If you don't have the money tonight, that's okay. But be sure that if you're one of the 16, you're going to give you priority because you said you needed it. So some of you that weren't here last time and we don't have enough books, I apologize if we didn't know you were coming, and you may need to purchase it. I will give you, if you're one of the people that has to purchase the book, you don't go to Barnes & Noble, they're $29.95 a piece. So we're going to sell the book to you for $15. If you go on Amazon and pay the shipping charge, I think we got them, I think within a couple days, I think the price per book was $17.95. So the employment ministry will make up the difference between the $17.95, which we paid for, and the $15 that we're going to charge you. So before you leave, I want to get back to working at the table. One of the last things you want to do before you leave is see John, and he'll have a book for you. And again, if you don't have the money with you tonight, you just come bring it next time when you have a chance. And some of you have done this already, and we've told people that, you know, if you've done it and used the book, it gives you a printout after you get your themes back, and it shows the top five themes. And there's a nice little printout you should be able to generate from your computer. And we want you to bring that. You can only use that little quiz at the back end of the book. I think it's like burgundy colored. You can only use it once. So once you get into completing that instrument and assessment, you know, finish it. Because that's the only way you can, otherwise you have to buy another book and get a different instrument. So, and we'll talk a lot about strengths finders in the next meeting. And what we're going to do is, middle to the end of the meeting, we're going to try to correlate strength finders to your competencies. Again, it's what it is it's validating who each of us are. And validation is important. We can speak then with confidence. So, what I'd also like you to do, and this will give me an idea of who's coming to the next meeting. There's my email address, johncathyr@comcast.net. I'd like you to email me your top 5 themes or strengths. And if you do that February 24th, that would be good. That'd give me a little bit of time. Yes?
To complicate matters, there's a subsequent book called Strengths-Based Leadership, I believe. So that's another $25 or something. I meant to bring it, but I grabbed the wrong one. It's got a silver and black.
It's a little bit different than that.
Yeah.
And I know what you're talking about, but for the sake of what we're doing here,
yeah,
we're going to do just the Strengths Finder book.
John, can I add to that just real quick?
Go ahead.
So when you get the book, all the way at the back, there's this little red flap, and inside there is the access code, and that's really what this is all about. Don't bother reading the book, except for the first 30 pages, which kind of walk you through it. Then they get into the specific themes, and some of them are not going to apply to you. So you'll get this all in your printout, so you can skip 80% of the book. So really, you're looking at this, and you're looking at the red access code. You open that up, you're online, and you type it in and take the test.
Is it fair to say, John, they don't have to read any of the book, just take the test, the in-test?
Yeah, I mean, it gives you a little overview.
An introduction, okay.
And they kind of talk about how people tend to focus on weaknesses.
Doesn't the book talk about the different 40 skills and how to, like how your skill, how you interface with those people, what their traits are? It helps you in that, doesn't it? It used to do that, I don't know if it still does.
Yeah.
A little bit, there's...
It defines all the skills, and then it tells you
the last
about
section talks about you may want to interface with,
right,
and it talks somebody opposite of you and I.
right, about how to interface with people with those traits and work with them, right? Doesn't it? So I think after you get your skills, I think the other pages become relevant.
Yes. Yep.
And this is what it'll look like when you cut open the code.
Yeah, it's fairly straightforward. And encourage you then to, because that will be the agenda to our next meeting. Thank you for that. I always forget to mention that. Any other question about strength finders, or we'll get back to what we want to do tonight? So we've handed out some highlighters. Take a look at your resume, identify 4 accomplishments, and see if you can highlight the competency in each of those accomplishments. And there can be more than one competency. Remember, the degree that we can perform those competencies is what justifies our paycheck. The degree that we perform those competencies justifies our paycheck. So what I'd like you to do, I don't have a watch. What time is it? 8:25. Why don't we take, 10 minutes? I think you can do that with 4 accomplishments. And then I'm going to ask you to pair off with one other person, and I'd like you to share that with the person next to you, and then vice versa, have that person share their competencies with you. And the reason we're doing that is I want you to have a good feel, beyond my up here blabbering, I want you to have a good feel that you're on track as to what you're doing. So when you go home, I want you to do that to your entire resume. If you remember what I mentioned to you about Tag Crowd, if you want a shortcut, take your current resume and put it in the Tag Crowd. And those big words are going to show up with the frequency. But I think to begin with, maybe use that as proof of the pudding. To begin with, use your eyes and mind to identify the competencies in your resume.
John, one more thing, back on strength finders. So at the very bottom, when you finish taking the test, you're going to email your top 5 strengths to John, no later than Friday, February 24th. I think you probably need the 10th, because our next meeting is the 15th, so that would be I'm guessing you want it the Friday before the meeting?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Yeah. Okay, so.
Such details, John.
So it's like a week and a half, basically.
We didn't complete our assignment.
What's the date? What is the date?
February 10th would be the Friday after next.
Okay.
This coming Friday's the 3rd, the next Friday's the 9th. And that'll give you a couple of days to buy out things.
Thank you.
21st is the 10th.
All right, go to work.